Welcome to the now third week of the daily online salons. I think we've really gone through a host of topics, all the way from just kind of like checking in with each other to surfacing projects that currently need support, to kind of like thinking a little bit longer term. And so today I'm terribly excited to, I think, be doing just that again. I think in the past years, really, we've seen, I think, a bunch of emerging technologies that kind of have popped up, and people have been kind of speculating about their long-term impact and whether they're racing away from civilization. On the other hand, a lot of them have been tremendously influential in opening access to education, and opening up access actually to things like this, really, for people across the world. And I think this is part of the reason why we have so many people really from all continents joining those salons, which I couldn't be happier about. So at the beginning of this year, actually, we had a lot of requests for Foresight to expand into different countries. And first, Lou and I were thinking maybe we'll go on a little tour and kind of try to help set up different Foresight X across the world. But then, obviously now with the travel ban, that can't happen. But then we're still doing it just online. So it's been a blessing in disguise. And yeah, I'm really, really happy. And this is, really just an example of the topic that we're discussing today, which is kind of changes to digital technology that we can expect from COVID-19, and especially kind of like the online education sector that has already been really booming and really just like lifting so many people kind of like into the conversation, how this may evolve in the next few years. And so, I'm really, really happy to have two people that, people couldn't be more qualified to be talking about those things. First, we have a talk by Brad Templeton, who's going to talk a little bit generally about anticipating changes in digital technology from COVID-19. And Brad has been a founding member of the computing faculty at Singularity University. He's the chairman Emiritus and Futurist at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. He founded the world's first .com, and he consults and speaks all over the world, and always has a good advice for me to how to improve my Zoom meetings. So thanks for that, Brad. And then shortly after, we're going to dig a little deeper and focus a little bit deeper on COVID-19 and opportunities for accessible digital education. And I'm super thrilled to have Erica Frank here. Erica is, I think, really kind of like a polymath in a lot of fields that I think will become very, very interesting in the next 5 to 10 years. I have met her at 4D earlier this year, which is kind of like a gathering over New Year's. And I didn't even know what you were doing at the beginning, Erica, because you were literally speaking about everything and anything, and you had input into most topics, really, just like your cousin Creon, I have to say. And yeah, I mean, from really I think you're pretty kind of like stellar academic background. You're an MD and have an MPH, and then FACPM. You're the founder inventor of nextgenu.org, which you're going to talk about today, which is really the world's first portal to free accredited higher education. So it's really accredited here. So you've been like working really hard, I think, to get this all standardized in kind of like for mainstream signaling, I would like to say. And it's really interesting because you have like a background in really, let's say, more medical and more scientific fields, but then you're also expanding that outward, and now you're just opening up kind of like the playing field to let other people join and participate in so many of your interests. So it's been really, really amazing to see that, and I can't wait for what you're going to share with us today. I'm still going to admit more folks from the waiting list, and yeah, without further ado, I want to give the stage up to Brad for a quick talk, then to you, Erica, and then we're going to start with Q&A. To everyone who is already on the call, feel free to collect questions in the chat. I'm going to share the two bios as well, and then we're going to use the chat as a queue from which to take questions in the Q&A, and then I'll just open up the floor to you. All right, well, with that being said, 10 minutes, the stage is yours, Brad, and I'm going to make you a co-host so you can share slides. Hi, Brad.
Yeah, good morning. Well, I've been working on ways to do things other than share slides because I don't think that works very well. So we'll see how that works. This will be an experiment with it. Allison forgot to mention another um, thing on my resume, which of course was being at the Foresight Institute, an august institution. So actually what we're here to talk about, and because of the way I'm going to do the slides, you'll probably want to make sure that you pin my video or you go into speaker view, even if you're using the gallery view most of the time. But let me shrink myself a little bit here, and now we'll see the slides behind me. So what I want to talk about is, it comes out of an essay I wrote in a long time ago in 2005 saying, you know, we're probably going to have a big pandemic and probably going to have to lock down. And what's the new technology that's coming down the pike going to mean for that? So I want to review what's happened, look at what we haven't been able to do, what we might be able to do in the future. And of course, a little hard to do that in just 10 minutes. But first, what we'll call the mature technology, which not really mature, but relatively recent, that's in there. We're kind of used to using it, and that's, you know, obviously working very successful. We're doing way better at working from home than I think anyone would have anticipated more than a few years ago, both with video conferencing tools, which I'll talk about, but also just the ability to control things. So many companies have so many employees who are able to work without necessarily having to be in the office. That's going reasonably well. Online shopping, we're going to talk about some of its little glitches and so on, but people seem to be doing gangbusters, of course, if they're in the online shopping business. And online education we'll hear about a little bit later, but that's also, you know, been around for a bit. Looking specifically at Amazon, which of course is the king of online shopping. So Amazon is indeed going gangbusters, but they're running into a lot of glitches. If you use Amazon, you've seen this. Now, they hired 100,000 new people all of a sudden, and obviously there's a lot of people out of work, giving them a pay increase. But if you've ordered from Amazon, you've probably noticed that products other than the main core products have putting 1 week or even 1 month delays on getting them, which to me has sort of eliminated a lot of the value that Amazon had. I'm actually going out and shopping with other online stores now instead of Amazon because I want some things like I almost said hard disk. The disk in this computer is not a disk. It is not, well, it is hard, I guess, solid state. But it died in my little video broadcasting computer, and I had to build another one on the weekend. And forget about getting it from Amazon. So I got it from Best Buy. I just drove up past their store, and the people came out of the store, saw me coming, and handed me the disk drive, and off I went, which was actually not a bad shopping experience if you think about it. So they're definitely not ready for that, getting some glitches, but it's happening. Now, we've seen, of course, some other companies that we thought might be useful and successful not do well. Uber and Lyft are in serious trouble. People don't want to get into a random Uber, whoever was in there in the back, or the driver, of course, who may be infected. Lime and Bird, all the hot new transportation companies have had to scale back quite a bit. The retail stores, many of them have had to shut, of course, or go to this curb selling that we talked about if they're selling things that people might need in the particular crisis. Restaurants are, well, we've seen what's happened to restaurants. Some of them even trying to sell groceries, which the cities tried to stop, but now people realize that's on. And you may have also heard that Instacart, one of the leading delivery companies for food and groceries, that their workers decided to strike because they wanted more money. They wanted it to help them with health protection, make sure that they had, you know, stupid things like hand sanitizer. Of course, we never realized that would be a hard thing to get. Who could imagine the United States could ever run out of alcohol, right? I mean, that doesn't seem like a likely event. It isn't, of course, possible to run out of alcohol, but it is possible to run out of it in nice little bottles on the shelf. So now let's look at what's happening that is less mature technology in the sense that we haven't been using it for a decade the way we've been using all those technologies. One of the technologies that everyone was very excited about, this is my big technology that I work on, the self-driving cars. Of course, they're not ready yet, so they wouldn't be able to scale up even if they were ready. There's an irony because they probably are ready for driving on mostly empty roads. But nobody sat down in meetings a year ago and said, hey, why don't we set as our goal, let's see if we can make our car drive on mostly empty roads. That's just, you know, not something anybody wanted to plan for. So in fact, quite the reverse, because testing of these cars is not an essential service. They're all tested today with a few exceptions at Waymo. They're all tested by having human drivers overseeing their operation, and those have all had to shut down. So instead of being a a wonderful boom. It's not happened, and it's something that I'd hoped would actually be able to help in this sort of situation. And this thing, this is one of Zoom's little promotional photos. You notice all the people are very good looking, racially balanced, and not wearing any headsets, and also very well lit. So that's what every Zoom call looks like. You guys look exactly like this as I see you on the rectangle on the screen. But this company now worth $43 billion, and absent some security issues that they've been having, it's been, of course, a giant boom for them and the other people in their industry. And again, I'm guessing Eric will also talk about how the MOOCs, which were actually kind of not sure where they were going, trying to figure out how they would make money, are suddenly everybody's darling, as well as the other educational tools. So now technology has not always been good. The new level of technology has not always been good. We've seen the ability to get better information about what's going on with the virus. I mean, we were very aware in our household about what was going on. And in January, we were buying chloroquine and oxygen concentrators and all those things you hear people talking about now, because the new online media made it possible to be more aware of it and to get better identification of what was going on. But obviously the same problems that took place, in this case, probably not as much deliberately stimulated by propaganda from Russia, but the same problems that we saw in the political arena have moved forward in this arena. And so we're seeing a lot of spreading of very fun and not tremendously true virus news. And I'm sure you've all seen plenty of that. And this has triggered things which really shouldn't have made sense. I mean, things like shortages of TP. Now, TP, as you now know, stands for the precious. And there was some people running around with a theory saying we're only out of toilet paper because everybody's crapping at home and not crapping in the office anymore. That's not true, because this toilet paper all was off these shelves long before we left our offices. This was just a panic that was spread by social networking in part. I mean, made everybody aware. Oh my God, everybody's stocking up on toilet paper, and I better get it. So every technological effect on this virus has not been as big as you'd suggest. Now here's a one that in the end I would say is surprisingly good. I mean, obviously we've seen the worst unemployment numbers in a long time recently because of the virus, but I actually think the number of people who are working is astonishingly large. I mean, it would, if you were to go back in time a couple of decades and say we're going to shut down the world to this extent, close all the offices unless they're making absolutely essential things, tell everyone they have to work at home even if they work at those companies if they can, you'd think unemployment would be like 50% or 60%, but it's not. And we're going to do even better if we ever have to go through this again. So I think that's a positive for us. But what technologies have we not been able to exploit? What have we? What's on the horizon and could do things for us, or it could actually be out there now, but we just weren't ready to make it happen. So a few I'll focus on. One is telepresence robots. So I use these. This is a picture of myself and Catherine in a telepresence robot attending a convention in London. We spent 3 days at that convention, and it was not exactly the same as being there, but it was about a third as good as being there. We didn't have to fly or get hotel. Now, don't ask why the woman we're talking to is dressed like Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. That's a long story. But nonetheless, this really works. But there are not, however, millions of telepresence robots deployed around the world where people can just be, get into them and quickly move around their environment and do things and talk to things. I think this will become a big thing in China, because we're going to go through a period where you still can't travel to China because they're scared of the virus in us now, of course. We were scared of them for a long time. They may still have it, but now they're scared of us. And so if you have a Chinese factory that you want to visit, which is making your stuff, and you can't go to it, well, then being able to at least go to it in a robotic body and wander around and not be pointed where they want to point you. The important part about this is that you get to point your attention where you want to point your attention, and not where someone with, say, a Skype on a phone points your attention. So that's a good technology that I think we'll see grow. And if we had more of them now, I think we'd be using them. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and we've done some other sessions here about what happens with advanced biotech. Now, in fact, there's an argument made that this is not the last plague we'll ever have, but it might be one of the last. That as a friend of mine, Raymond McCauley, put it, this is the first battle of the last war with infectious disease. that we should be at a level before too long of pull out the disease, sequence it, run it through some software, and say, okay, here's a treatment, here's a vaccine, go at it. We don't have that yet, but hopefully in a decade or two we'll have it. So maybe all of this talk will be for nothing because we're not going to have to face at least any natural diseases. We may, of course, have to think about non-natural diseases. I work on these delivery robots. They're from Starship. So these little guys, very efficient and cheap delivery. And when you have a sudden demand for online delivery, this is a great thing to have. Now, a lot of people have been saying, and of course, great, no driver to infect your package. But that I would love to say that's the great thing. It turns out that you could just, take a van which has one of those electric doors like half those minivans have, and put a driver in the front seat. He never leaves the front seat. He just opens the door and people put packages in and people take packages out. It would be exactly the same as a delivery robot and it would create new jobs. So there's not as big an advantage from this, but there is some advantage to come from this. So, and another one here, I don't know if you can hear the audio, but I'll just say, this is augmented reality for basically building, I'm going to kill the audio in my own thing here, for what's called remote assistance. So the woman just points her phone at the control panel, and the other woman is pointing to buttons on the control panel and saying, here's the button to push, here's the wire to pull. Now they bump it up. This is a Microsoft video. This isn't real yet. You put your augmented reality glasses on and you can see it says pull those cables aside. She's drawn that. It paints that on the world. And then here's the board you're going to replace. So this, for the first part with the cell phones, that's real. Right? And so what we need to be doing, and there's obviously billions of cell phones out in the world already with just needing software to make this happen. So when we get a world where we've got lots of people who can go back to work because they're either recovered from the disease, or we move to a world where, say, young, not at-risk people are out in the world and old fogies are back at home, those senior people can be back there directing people and making the factories run and getting the equipment online and doing the physical things of the world that can't be done in work from home. So we should be able to get that unemployment level down to an even lower number if we ever have to go through this again. In fact, I'm proposing that we declare a national work from home day every year. It would both be a day memorial for the people who die in this plague, but it would also be a day where we dry run everything. Every kid stays home and get some online education. Everyone gets used to using it. We get the bugs out. Everybody does the same thing, has their online meetings. Not everybody. So if you are in an essential job that you can't work from home, you still work in the office as you have to, because we're not going to say slow down the economy to do this. But you get a score. Your company gets a score. How ready are you if we suddenly have to shut off for a couple of weeks? And then you might be much more ready. And as certain people know, that if you're really strict on your work from home and your social distancing very early on, you don't have to shut down for 3 months. You can shut down for a few weeks and get the disease spreading very low. So this would be an interesting new day to declare for the world. So anyway, that's a very brief rundown on where things are going, and we'll talk about more in the questions, and then I will make myself big again so you can see me better.
All right, great. You already have a comment from David, which is, it would be more fun if it was an international work from home day, but we'll collect. Why not? Let's aim high. And they could be combined with or in addition to Creon's Dr. Lee Celebration Day for whistleblowers. Okay, next one up, we have Erica. Please you give us an introduction into Next Gen U and what that means for online education.
Sorry, I have to apologize. I'm not seeing we just installed a new Zoom and I'm trying to share my screen. Can you help me with that? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's a green button on the bottom. If you move your mouse
at the bottom
of the screen.
Yeah, I've got it. I've gotten share screen, but it is not giving me. I'll just do it this way.
No, you're live.
Perfect.
There you go.
Good.
You're on.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks. So let me, hopefully that will transition as well to our site. So delighted to be chatting with y'all. And I modified the title of my talk a little bit because this weekend a friend of mine died from COVID. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is not just an exercise for a lot of people. And so I wanted to start there. I'll transition to a more conventional introduction. This is who I am. I'm a professor at University of British Columbia. And as Allison mentioned, I'm also the inventor and founder of nextgenu.org, which I'll be talking about in a bit. Okay, so this is what the pandemic looks like for some of us now, right? Is an expression of love for each other by self-isolating because we care about our families and our communities and our world. But, and for many of us, of course, it's been just a minor inconvenience. This is me last week doing what Miriam called field work. Yeah, I was observing the fact that I was the only one wearing a mask and gloves. One of half a dozen people at Costco that I saw in the hours that I was there waiting in line and then inside, who was wearing even a mask of any kind, much less an N95. So this is about as bad as it has been for many of us, right? But there is considerable risk in past pandemics and equivalents. The governments and capitalists have seized the reins and used it as an opportunity to make a post-crisis world sadder and smaller and more with wealth and access more concentrated in the hands of a few. And we've seen some preliminary signs of this, of course, already. This from the Times from a couple days ago. Same thing is happening here in Canada with suspending oversight rules for environmental issues, just like the EPA is doing. There is the opportunity for big oil to be getting hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars on the national scale, even in Canada. And so these forces are all working to also take advantage of this situation, but to do it for their usual purposes. Where we start to see things turn, though, is when we have organizations whose purposes are always altruistic, like UNICEF, and when they see problems that arise that are horrific because of COVID, and try to find beneficent ways, not capitalistic ways, to fix this, as they always have. So both in terms of their outreach and also in terms of their internal approaches. So that's what a lot of us are seeing now. But we can't forget things like this, which is what we were all concentrating on, or many of us were concentrating on, especially those in the Bay Area, right, in California last summer, in terms of thinking about other issues. So what I want to talk about today are just a couple examples that I'm heavily involved with that are going to try to take some of these positive possibilities and some of the horrible things we were dealing with before COVID was added to our plates, and try to emerge on the other side, like Brad and Allison were talking about, with a better world for those of us, for the majority of us who will have survived this. So this is a slide that transformed my life about a decade ago. I've traveled in 70 countries now for work and for pleasure, starting when I was 6 years old. And This, though, has completely altered my patterns. As an academician, of course, it's expected that you fly to lots of meetings. So this is, this one I just focused on for a moment. So 3,500 kilometers and back. Let's just look at that one for a second. So this is if you fly economy class. This is if you fly first class, because you're responsible for about twice as much of the proportion of the flying that is being done in that plane. Happy to explain that more if of interest. And so with one such flight in economy class, going a little further, one would make more CO2 pollution than the average Indian or African or Filipino or Nepalese resident would do. And so you can see how quickly this adds up. And this was, this of course puts to shame my Prius driving, recycling, bicycling self. It just, if I take one flight, it's all for nothing. So I often take, as you recall, the lowest category there was 3,500 kilometers and back, which for those of us who are American by birth still needs translation. So it's about 2,000 miles. And that's about the round trip from home to visit some of y'all in the Bay Area. And I often would do that a couple times a year. So that, of course, again, puts me in this category with just those two flights. So the solution that we have come up with, or a partial solution anyway, is this new organization, meethere.org, which we've just started. The professional society meetings that I expected to go to this year have all been canceled, and there's a huge hunger to find alternatives. So we've set this up as a nonprofit to allow mainly other nonprofits, but others too, to be able to have a free place to populate a template and make a virtual meeting, and then to have some consultation if they need it, to be able to get more help with doing so. So this is our site. Y'all are welcome to have a look at it. I'll talk about this piece in just a second, a little bit more. So yeah, and feel free to get in touch with us there or through other media. All right, I'll have my email.
Could you show us the site?
Oh yeah, sure. It's just meethere.org. Yeah. Okay. And I'll put it in, or I bet Miriam will put it in. So Miriam Chickering is our Chief Operating Officer, both for meethere.org and for NextGenU, which I'll tell you about in a sec. So this is the impetus, right? Specifically, that this is a campaign that I was working on before COVID came into our view. And so this is a real opportunity to do something substantive about climate change with just a reasonably small change in, even from our prior behavior, that we could reduce our travel carbon footprint for academic meetings by more than 90%. So happy to talk about all of that more, but life has gone on, and so these are administrative postings from an email that I got this morning of all of the problems that are going to be, in effect, made worse by COVID, because to some extent, sure, it's a democratizer, but it's also hitting the most impoverished most heavily. So this particularly for some good, by looking at the hundreds of millions of learners, of students who are now not on campuses, but who are learning from home. And so a bit more now about MOOCs and other equivalents that Brad was talking about, and I'm gonna end with this piece. So what I'm going to talk about mainly is nextgenu.org, which I invented in 2001, and it's the world's first and still only portal to free accredited higher education. So I want to show you a little about that, because I think that this has come to us from across the United States, around the world, WHO, CDC, wanting our help to educate people in the era of COVID. We're present in every country but South Sudan, with registrants in every country. And I'm just going to do a few-minute dive into nextgenu.org now, and then we'll stop for questions. We're available in over 100 languages through the magic of Google Translate. I'll end with this slide, and I presume, Allison, this will all be available too. But these are characteristics that we share with traditional universities, ones that we share with massive open online courses, and ones that are unusual or unique to NextGenu, particularly this one that is what most people care about most. So we have strong partners that give me, as an educator, reassurance that what we're doing is useful and appropriate. How we create our courses is super simple. We take published competencies, we pair them with existing allowed online resources from universities, specialty societies in medicine, peer-reviewed journals, and governments. Those are our 4 authorized sources for our resources. And then we organize them into modules. These are trainings that might be of particular interest to you. We offer now the world's first free degree, and we've gotten it accredited in the United States with our first pilot in Texas. We're about to offer all of these other pieces, that pre-health sciences training, MedSchoolInABox, Preventive Medicine residency, a student-facing Bachelor's of Science in Nursing with Miriam Chickering, who I mentioned is on our call today. She's, besides being NextGenu's Chief Operating Officer, she's Nurses International's Chief Executive Officer, and other courses that we're working on as well. So standard MPH curriculum with our standard structure, competency-based, including mentored and peer activities. We have these courses developed. That's what they look like. These are the ones that we got a grant from CDC to develop. It's the core courses for the MPH, plus some important electives, which we're adding now with additional funding from CDC and with collaboration from WHO. We're offering, starting next summer, now a preventive medicine residency, summer of 2021, with our colleagues in Texas, using our MPH program, our Master's in Public Health. It's a standard preventive medicine residency. Happy to talk with you all about that. And I just want to finish with some evaluations, how we evaluate our students, and evaluations of NextGenu. So students are allowed to evaluate the course in a couple different ways, including evaluating granularly down to every learning object. There are peer and mentored activities when required by the competencies, and also objective testing. And we're working on adding more bells and whistles to these kinds of lively activities, like peer and mentored activities, including, gamifying through this network. Here's an opportunity for a student to give feedback on some text. Here's a translated, of course, into all the Google languages as well. These are the kinds of things that we can do for assessment security. And these are our major quantitative data. So this was a pilot we did in Maryland, one in Missouri, with emergency medicine for senior medical students, showing identical knowledge acquisition. And here in British Columbia at Simon Fraser University, with one of our MPH courses, showing identical knowledge acquisition and superior student satisfaction. And we found that in Africa as well, with trainees in terms of their confidence, increased confidence in treating patients for substance use, reducing even as difficult to change behaviors as stigma against people with substance use disorders. The learners, the primary care docs, found it applicable and, again, motivating, and the patients as well found that when their docs had gone through this training, that they were able to stop drinking and educate and feed their kids, and in this case, in fact, at a 1-year follow-up, be able to have a child, which they attributed to their doc having taken this course. So that's my favorite case study data. So I think I'll end there. Thank you, and yeah, delighted to Q&A now, yeah?
All right, thanks. Wow, that was quite a trip through a lot of different topics, and I think you know, that gives people a really good, I think, understanding of like the variety of topics that you touched on, really, with your magic wand. So let's see. For now, we have a question. Creon is up first, and then we have Ife next.
Hey, Erica, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the type of training and degree programs that NextGenU offers. And then maybe after just briefly discussing that, I'm wondering, as I recall, one of the interesting things about NextGenU was that it wasn't just online learning. Like there were people on the ground who were doing certain aspects of like the medical training and stuff like this. And how has that changed with this pandemic, or has it?
Okay, make sure I don't miss any parts, Cree, thanks. So the courses that we offer, so we started with medicine and public health, because those are my 2 areas of training, and also where I've been a career educator, employed by or in attendance at a university since I fledged, and always doing both traditional education, but also using mass media. And so that was sort of the philosophical underpinning of it. So that's why we have as our first courses a master's degree in public health and MedSchoolInABox. The MedSchoolInABox is just for now resources, but we're hoping to soon transform that into full courses like we have for the MPH. Miriam's Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, she created that with Nurses International as a faculty-facing BSN, and now we're co-transforming that into a student-facing BSN. We're working with colleagues in the United States and in Israel on creating a master's in bioethics. We're applying for a NIH grant on that one in a couple months. We have a master's in health administration that our colleagues at the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and the University of Trinidad and Tobago are giving us as quid pro quo for giving them an MPH. So those are the courses that are either courses and degrees that are, oh, and a pre-health sciences certificate. That'll be ready within the next few months, and that's that is paired, that's essentially the first 2 years of a 6-year medical program or a nursing program. What other pieces, Cree? There was one other aspect of your question.
You had people on the ground for some of your training in other countries.
Yep.
How has that changed?
Yep. So where competent, it is important to our learners and the universities who adopt these courses or the employers who send their learners to them to know that they're getting something that is of high quality. And so all of our courses are competency-based. most of those competencies, sometimes all, we're able to fulfill with just readings or videos or exercises one can do oneself and multiple choice questions. But sometimes there are competencies that say, for example, in emergency medicine, start an IV under supervision competently. So you got to have somebody to have eyes on, right? We're working on ways that we can minimize that using these kinds of technologies. But traditionally and most efficiently, one has a local person to do eyes on those kinds of things that can only be done human to human. And that's the beauty of this kind of thing, is it can free all of us to only do the kinds of things that have to be done human to human. And all the other knowledge transfer stuff and skill transfer and even attitudinal change can now be done with machine learning.
All right, thank you. And next one up, we have Ife, and you had multiple questions, Ife, but if I may ask.
Oh, no. Just ask one.
Okay, yeah, shall we pick the one for Brad?
Me?
Yeah,
for Brad?
You had a question for Brad in the chat.
I do. I had a question for Erica first, but let's go with Brad first. My question to you is, because you're working on the robotics, which are related to 5G, AI, big data stuff, the next generation of technology is right here. And people are talking about, Internet of Things, IoT. But the problem, from my perspective, it looks like there is a shortage of development in terms of particular application. It's not like a 4G, we have all kind of apps, online stuff. And so right now, China is pushing very hard on that front, how to compensate the huge cost, the single cost of putting down all the infrastructure, which is tremendous from no matter from what perspective. So my question to ultimately is, what's your assessment of the future for the 5G AI big data? Is going to create another bubble, or is something real? Is the future is very bright, or it's blind, period?
Well, of course, it's going to create a bubble. That doesn't mean it's not real. In fact, everything that is real creates, this is, Gartner identified this very well with what they call their hype cycle. Everything that is real starts out with people thinking it's more than it is, and then realizing, oh, all those crazy promises. And so 5G and big data have become more marketing phrases than they are technical phrases. AI is debatable. In AI, there's what I call the fundamental theorem of AI, which is once we figured out how to do it, it is no longer AI. So therefore, there is never any AI. But 5G, though, is very much a marketing phrase. In fact, there's only a little bit of stuff. Now, that doesn't mean deploying more networking and making it faster is not a good thing. I don't think there's actually going to be that much trouble in justifying the infrastructure expenditures for more networking. I think people want more networking. They will consume it, and they will pay a good amount of money for it. So I'm not too worried about that. The Internet of Things is, of course, just the marketing name for what we used to call embedded systems. It's great, it's useful. It's just three trends that have been going on for some time: computing getting smaller and cheaper, sensors getting smaller and cheaper, things getting lower power. You put all those things together, you get a lot more embedded systems. That's also good stuff. When someone called it Internet of Things, it was just because they thought internet was a good word, and so we have to stick internet on there. In fact, the last thing you want is an Internet of Things. You don't want everything talking to every other thing in the world. That's actually a bad idea from a computer standpoint. So I'm not too, so those things are going to go on, and I do talk about those in a lot of other contexts, but I don't think there'll be, the only blight is actually the big security consequences of some of these things, and particularly of IoT embedded systems, because they're not being designed very well. They're being designed by companies that go out of business, and so that you can never update their software. And that's one of the reasons that it was a mistake to think we should have an Internet of Things. It's more that things should talk over local networks and not go beyond that. And I think most people who design them kind of know that, but not all of them do. A lot of them have said, "Oh yeah, this my light bulb has to be on the internet." So if they get over that, then I think they do okay with it. Now, I don't know if this has a lot of application to our particular topic today, which is how we respond to plagues and how technology changes that. I mean, it certainly is technology that enables more work from home and enables some of the things that we've seen that have let us get through this plague. And by the way, I just want to think it's good that we're having an all Canadian day here today. Every day should be all Canadian. I can't go to Canada right now because if I do, I don't think they let me back in this country. So, Allison, who's up next, or someone else just wants to raise hand or talk?
Eric, I had a question for you. Maybe I just jump in since everybody's quiet. Is that okay?
I have a question for Brad about telepresence robots.
Okay.
So it seems like it seems to be only, I think, 2 companies that I've seen offering access to telepresence robots in specific cities. So what do you think would be needed for them, for the technology as a whole to scale, for it to be usable in the way you'd imagine it usable? Like, for example, I don't have a center that goes to Nairobi,
if this question's for me, I can't hear. I'm sorry to
interrupt. No, I'm hearing it. I think it's for me, Brian. Yeah, I hear you, Brian.
Thanks. Sorry.
Oh, okay. It's all bad. So the question is, like, in order to get telepresence robots to scale, for them to be usable in a really interesting way, there need to be centers within cities, or like reasons for people to want to like teleport in a way to a particular city, whether they're in a VR or in a double robotics rig.
Yeah.
What do you think would be needed for things like that to happen?
Now, you've hit the nail on the head, and this is something that not most of the companies in the telepresence robot industry, I don't know if I should say they didn't realize it, but they certainly didn't deal with it, which is that the problem is if you buy a telepresence robot, it's no good to you. It's only good for people away from you. If you want to inhabit a telepresence robot, it has to be someone else's in another town, unless you just talk about 2 branch offices of a company. And then that's the people who bought them. Actually, was a boss would say, oh, I'd love to wander around the branch office in the robot and talk to the employees. So that was an example where you could buy it and use it, but most of the time you needed to be somewhere else for you to use it. Nobody built designs that could be really easily FedExed and set up at the other end. They always had enough trouble being set up. Just getting devices on Wi-Fi is still a pain these days. So, and they do need very good Wi-Fi in order to operate. So, the market that never appeared was the idea of being able to rent them in other places. And there are a couple of companies that do that, but it hasn't happened. So actually the augmented reality remote assistance technology is kind of approaches that in the sense that, another human being simply carries around your eyes and ears for you in the form of a phone or tablet, and you direct them and say, okay, now look over there. And that's not quite the same level of control as you get when having a robot, but it does some of that, and it requires lower cost technology. So that's what we're going to see right now in the near future. But yeah, the idea has to take off. It has to be good enough. People have to feel it's worth inhabiting it. You know what? The hard truth is, in spite of the chart we saw about the greenhouse gases, I know that people really want to be there in person rather than all of these alternatives, and they're willing to spend the large cost of that first-class ticket as well as the greenhouse gas cost of that first-class ticket. And so you need the technology to get good enough that people change their mind about that. And this hasn't happened, and maybe things like COVID are the things that make that happen if the companies have been ready.
Is there
Erica, do you want to fill in, or
research on the interface problem, especially when it comes to people interfacing with people who have telepresence robots?
Okay.
Sorry, Alison, he was giving a follow-on. I don't know if you want that, if you want to go to another questioner.
Yeah, no, take the follow-on.
So did you get that, or should I repeat
well, you were asking something about problems with interface, but I didn't get full detail of it.
Yeah, so like I would imagine there's an issue when people are talking to people who are inhabiting telepresence robots. Like I'm still sort of in that like my section. Like it seems like it may not really be the most efficient way of actually getting that collaboration. Like what other alternatives do you think people would make?
Actually, I mean, so there were a lot of different companies that made them. A friend of mine, Scott Hassan, made the Beam robot, which was definitely the best of them. And it really was a qualitative difference that, getting to a higher level really changed. And a lot of people would remark to me that they were surprised when I'd inhabit it. They were surprised as though they felt they were talking to me. They felt, that they were having a conversation with a person, not a robot, and not a Skype session. So if you do it well, you focus on the audio. It turns out the audio is even more important than the video. That actually made a difference. My friend Scott, I mean, he has them in his house, of course, and his children hug them. When he's out on a business trip and he goes into it and comes to see his kids will hug the robot. They really do transfer his presence into it. And so, and that can only get better as we improve the technology. So it may be that we're just waiting for that magic cliff to happen, and people will feel that they're in it. But absolutely, you've got to have. It does have to cost a bit of money right now. In the future, that wouldn't be true. Everything is, that costs $10,000 today is available in a Hello Kitty toy at some point. But you do need to get the technology up to a level where people will start treating it as a real person telepresent rather than as some weird device.
All right, thank you. Maybe we should try that at next Vision Weekend to offer that service. Let's see how well it sticks.
Yeah, well,
if we can do it in person.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So next one up, we have David, please.
Hi there. I think I asked a question about my kind of still level of shock at seeing, and not just reading, about the surveillance of Uyghurs in China, and the portrayal last night on a PBS Frontline that I commend to everyone's attention of underground video footage, and seeing just how many cameras are everywhere in a pretty modern looking urban environment that looks very familiar, except for the Chinese characters, to ones that I'm familiar with in the West. It makes me wonder whether disease surveillance is going to be a pretext for the next 2 years to consolidate and extend control of civilian society and civil institutions and various sources of resistance, otherization of, misbehaving, renegade, whatever it is, libertarians, ethnic groups, whatever. I'm not a libertarian, by the way, but this is the ultimate statist opportunity. Our quarantine laws in the United States and Europe have been on the books for years. They were used to exclude, for rational reasons, immigrants at Ellis Island, which is where my ancestors came in. And, it's like, there's the legal and technical infrastructure. This is the opportunity. Is there anything we can do to mitigate that risk? That's the question, I guess, for Brad.
Well, one thing you could do is actually in these Foresight salons, we have a video from last week of a salon on contact tracing, and the speakers went into some depth on the efforts to try and make quarantine software tools, contact tracing tools that are pre-designed to be privacy protecting. Because you're absolutely right, if we don't do that, they will create tools which are not privacy protecting and which could have other purposes. Now, fortunately, people feel that that's probably possible to make those tools. Now, sometimes that instinct is wrong. It's notoriously wrong at times in history. But if so, we do need to be preemptive. And yes, we don't want to make people have an excuse to make this like it looks. But, you said there's too many cameras in Xinjiang. There's too many cameras in London. You don't have to go to Xinjiang to see cameras everywhere. So that's the step we have to take. Fortunately, I think we can do it, and we just don't want to. Yes, Allison.
Yeah, I just want to chime in with on Monday with a plug for the Human Rights Foundation. They have a COVID-Con on Monday, which is a free online conference where they're talking about authoritarianism and COVID-19, and I think it's a good one to join. They have really like a fantastic lineup of folks that are talking about like how authoritarian states across the globe have kind of failed this crisis, have exacerbated it, and how they're trying to take advantage of it right now. So that's a good one, I think, to join, and if you want my input on that. But I definitely think, I think by getting ahead of the curve and building the technology that makes it less likely is another one. And I just want to point that in the Foresight Salon, where we discuss different contact tracing tools, actually in the schedule, schedule on our website, I linked to, I think, 3 different lists. One is GitHub, 2 are Google Docs on the best contact tracing tools, privacy preserving contact tracing tool efforts out there right now, if anyone wants to look them up.
And by the way, this is hard. There's a group at MIT, for example, that's got some attention for their tool, but they're actually using a GPS track log tracing approach, which actually is not privacy protecting and actually doesn't even work very well. So this is not a trivial thing to do.
The worst of both worlds. Great.
No,
okay.
sorry, it could be even worse, but it's not good. It's just, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I'll have one. Okay.
A quick question.
So you were.
Can I have a quick question?
Yeah,
I leave
yes,
in a couple of
Ife,
minutes.
go for it before you have to
I
go.
have an appointment at 10 o'clock
Yes,
with the interview.
go
So
for it.
the question for me is for Eric, because actually a couple of years ago, I was talking to my
Wait,
provost.
Ife, one question for you.
Yeah,
Ife, aren't you based? You're based in China, right?
yeah. No, I mean Los
So
Angeles.
what do you? Oh,
I'm in
you're in
Los
Los Angeles.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
a faculty
okay.
member at
Yeah.
in Cal State Northridge. So
So
I'm
you
from
can
China.
you can tell us the truth of what's happening in Xinjiang.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell us if you were there.
To tell the truth about the cameras, it's everywhere. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, it's everywhere. So you need to be careful. If you want to be naked, don't do it in China. Do it in America or Canada. That's fine. Don't do it in China. Okay. So that's true. But I want to
Okay.
go
Now
back
your
to
question.
Eric.
Sorry.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Further question from you to me? Okay, good. My question for Eric is, back a couple of 5 years ago when MOOC, the Harvard, those universities come up with a MOOC model. It was free. Most of the courses were free at that time, but now they start charging money. So I was talking to my provost how to incorporate the idea of online courses into our curriculum. So I talked to him. He was very happy. Let's do it and do something internally. But then he talked to me and said, how about you contact MOOC? Let's use their courses for our curriculum, just like what you're doing, and get your courses into our program. But immediately, we got objection from the faculty because we're going to kill some position on campus, which is something not be welcomed by the union or those, people and represent the interest of who are right here on a job. At that time, keep in mind, that was right after the financial crisis. So people already were on the crush. Now you're trying to replace furthermore positions and from campus. And the full-time faculty members say we are already overloaded with the furlough stuff, with more student service come to our shoulder. So I'm just trying to understand, when you're trying to develop this kind of free online courses, what kind of reactions you get from the administrators on campus, and what kind of reaction you got from the faculty member, your fellow, from UBC? Let's say, do they like your idea? Say, no, Eric, just stop right here. You're scaring us away.
You need to turn your microphone on.
Mike.
It's a sadly perceptive question. At both at UBC and at Emory, this inspired an insistence at the highest organizational levels of building a clear wall between what is nextgenu.org and what is my role at UBC as a Canada Research Chair in Preventive Medicine and Population Health, which is where I do my research on nextgenu.org. So at Emory, I had the dean of the School of Medicine was very resistant. The dean of the School of Public Health gave me the third ever award for the outstanding alumna graduate. So it, even within the same institution, even within a faculty of health sciences, there are greatly disparate responses. And to that I say, great. If you're interested in using our courses, as schools across the United States and around the world are doing, terrific, please have them. If you don't want to, that's okay too, but know that your faculty who are complaining about this huge weight on their shoulders could just take any one of these courses, get 90% of the work that they'd have to do to develop a new course done for them, and then they can just do the Q&A part. That's the most fun part of being a professor and the most productive, and the only part that can be done by humans. So that's, yeah, some people are scared, some people are receptive, and more people are receptive now because they're scared more of COVID than they are of digital education, right? So this is an opportunity to give them some relief, and with this thing that really needn't be that frightening. And looking forward to talking
All
with
right.
you more.
Yeah, well, this was amazing. I think this was really just the kickoff to a lot of, I think, follow-up private conversations, apparently. So thank you so much for joining, to Brad and Erica. I thought this was lots of pretty practical silver linings, I think. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm hoping that I may see a few of you at future salons, and I think many of you I will see for a salon. Again, if you want to not miss those salons, please add the Google Calendar. First of all, check out the Sanity schedule, which has everything, and then from there it has links where you can even add the salons to your Google Calendar to keep track of time zone difference. All right, I'll be in touch with some of you. Thank you so much, Brad and Erica, again. I hope you have a lovely day. And yes, much more digital connection, please, in the future. Bye, everyone. Have a lovely.
One little plug
Yeah.
to next week. Several people together with myself will be holding a giant online conference on future technologies, not just related to COVID. It's called Exo World. And I don't have the URL with me, but anyway, it'll be 14th, 15th, and 16th. We have the President of the United Nations. We have former presidents of Argentina and Mexico, and speakers, most of the main speakers from Singularity University. We have, anyway, a whole bunch of great folks who will be giving talks, and there's also going to be the way to meet and chat with other participants and so on. So I think it's exoworld.info or live, exoworld.live. And it does cost money, though. We're trying to actually figure if there's a way to not just do all this for nothing and actually go back to making money, which was kind of fun when we could do that. Well, actually, the spending the money was more fun. So anyway, hopefully I'll see you there.
Okay, I plugged the link to your profile on that website, on the conference. And then I think, let's see, Epicenter podcast also had another plug before we leave. As we are talking about online events, let's get practical here. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I came in a little bit late for Brad's talk, but I wanted to also talk about an event that I'm hosting on April 29th. It's called Reset Everything. And the website is reseteverything.events. And the goal is to explore the lasting effects of COVID-19 on things like monetary policy, education, work and collaboration, privacy, all these topics basically that we're all very interested and concerned about will be discussed here at Reset Everything. It's a 24-hour event. It's all day long, and it's free. And I'm also looking for speakers, so feel free to reach out.
What is your name?
Sorry, Sebastien. I'll leave my email here in the.
I listen to your podcast regularly. It's great.
Oh.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
With a title like Reset Everything, though, you're just inviting people to hack into your conferencing platform, aren't you?
Yeah, don't do that. We need Chinese policemen to be here.
It's on the blockchain. It's unhackable.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So here's the link, and I'm happy to get your collaboration or participation or anything if you're willing to give us some of your time. Thank you.
Love it. Well, see, we're doing it. Okay, well, then I can't wait until we meet each other at each other's respective online events. For now, I'll say goodbye, and I wish Creon a lovely start into his birthday, and I hope to see you for the champagne happy hour later. See you later, everyone else.
Creon, don't forget to sing happy birthday twice to yourself every time you wash your hands.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.